Hello! So this video is going to show how to modify animations for newer Hedgehog Engine 2 titles like Sonic Frontiers or Shadow Generations. In order to get started, we just need to obtain a couple downloads. First things first is going to be Blender. The newest version of Blender that is supported by the animation add-on is going to be 4.5. As of this video, 5.0 is the newest version. So in order to download an older version, we simply go to the download button in this top ribbon, go to previous versions, download any Blender, scroll down to Blender 4.5, and obtain the installer for the latest version of 4.5 for Windows x64. Once you do that, the next thing we need to download is HedgeArcPack.exe from this GitHub repository, HedgeLib. The way you do that, you go to Releases, and under this release from March 2nd, under the Assets dropdown, there will be an application, HedgeArcPack.exe, and we download this. Finally, we need to download the Blender add-on for editing the animation files, which is going to be PXD Animation Tools. The way to download this one, you go to the Releases tab, or just click the latest one that's right here. As of this video, it's 2.1.4. And under the Assets dropdown, we click PXD Animation Tools.zip. The last thing we will need is going to be a Blender extension called HEIO, or Hedgehog Engine Blender Input-Output. This does not have a dedicated download. It is going to be obtained within Blender. Once your downloads are obtained, then you need to browse the directory for the game and obtain some files from there. So in my case, I'm going to be going into Sonic Frontiers install directory. I'm going to go to Image, 64, Raw, and in this case, I'll just edit Sonic, so I'll go to Character, and there will be an archive, Sonic.pack. I'm just going to copy this and add this to a different folder. And this is where HedgeArcPack.exe comes in. If you drag this over HedgeArcPack, you're going to get a warning if it's your first time running it. Press More Info, press Run anyways. This is a safe program. A little command line will pop up, and it will generate a folder, and it's going to be the contents of what was inside this pack. And you will see a whole bunch of files. In this case, what we're going to be editing are going to be these PXD files. PXD can either be a skeleton or an animation file. Now that we have those ready, in Blender, we need to start installing our tools. We're going to start with installing the animation add-on, and the way you'll do that is going to Preferences from the Edit menu, go to Add-ons, and in this little drop down here, Add-on Settings, do Install from Disk. And then you're going to locate where you downloaded the PXD Animation Tools.zip, and you'll just double click it. And it will be installed. Make sure you don't get any error pop-ups. And finally, we're going to install HEIO. And this will allow us to import a model to actually see our animations in actions. This install is going to be a little different. We're going to go to Get Extensions. Actually, before that, we need to go to System, and under Network, we need to make sure that Allow Online Access is checked. If it's not checked, enable that, then go to Get Extensions. At the very top, we're going to click Repositories, then click the plus icon on the right, add Remote Repository, and we're going to copy and paste the link that is in HEIO's install guide. Just like that, press Enter, check for updates on startup, create. Now we have to rename a couple things. Double click on the new entry justin113d.com and rename it to Sonic space I/O. Enter. And under the Advanced tab, rename this module justin113d_com to Sonic_IO and press enter. Ignore this warning up here. Go to this drop down here, press refresh remote, and now in this search bar we can type hedge, and now we have Hedgehog Engine IO. Click install. It might take a second, but now the add-on should be downloaded and ready to go. It is usually best practice at this point to go to the hamburger menu and press Save Preferences so that these add-on settings are saved. And when installing a new add-on, it's usually a good idea to restart Blender. So we're going to quickly do that. Reboot Blender. And now when we go to File, Import, we will have a couple new options. We'll have ANM.pxt, SKL.pxt, and this menu HEIO formats. So to get started, we're going to do File, Import, HEIO formats, and we're just going to import a Hedgehog Engine model. Go to your extracted archive and look for the model you're trying to animate. I'm going to click chrsonic.model for Sonic's model. On the right here, you want to make sure you also select your target game, mine is Sonic Frontiers. If yours is Shadow Generations, you might want to click that one. Import. And if we zoom in, we now have our model. If we do Alt-Z, we can X-ray, go to pose mode, and make sure that this works, which it does. But this skeleton is not going to do us any good. It is not the same skeleton that is used for animations. So, we're going to delete this skeleton, and we're going to import a different skeleton from this menu, skl.pxt. Go to your extracted archive and look for the skeleton that is the exact same name as your model, and leave all these settings as default if you just want everything to work. Something I like to do is just set the end bone length to minimum, just so it's a bit easier to look at once you reach the end of a given joint. Now, if we try and use this skeleton, you will notice that it does not work right away. And also you'll notice that the rotation, when you press Alt-R to clear it, is lying on its back. And we need to make sure that this model is oriented the exact same way. So you can do that where you do R to rotate, X to lock, and do -9D. -90 on your number pad or keyboard and press enter. Control A, rotation. So now when we clear this object's rotation, it should be lying on its back. Now that we did that, in this object, under the object properties, under relations, make sure we set the parent to that skeleton object. So now when we move it, it is now parented to the skeleton. However, posing still doesn't work yet. So go back to object mode in the mesh. Under the modifiers, the armature modifier now needs to point to the skeleton object. Once it does that, then posing will work as intended. Finally, in object mode, we're going to rotate him back up, standing up. So R to rotate, X to lock it, 90. And we are not going to apply the transform. We are going to leave it looking like this so that if we cleared it, it would be lying on his back. The reason why is HEIO converts the orientation of the model to something that Blender likes, which is Z, up and down. But in the game engine, they treat Y as up and down. And that is how the animation add-on interprets data. So that's why the native rotation has to be like this. Once we have that though, once we have a skeleton where we can actually see the pose, we can now select the skeleton, go to File, Import ANM.pxd for Hedgehog Engine 2 animation, extracted folder, and now we can just import any of these ANM.pxd files and preview its animation. Make sure it's the exact same name as your model towards the front. Don't get confused with animations that belong to a different model. For example, if you scroll down, we have CHR Sonic Spin, which is a different model than this one, CHR Sonic. And anything after the @ symbol is going to be a possible animation. You can filter this by just typing the name of your model and the @ symbol in this upper search bar, and anything that's not compatible will be hidden. So for example, I'm just going to click one of these at random. And it looks like we have an animation, and if we press the spacebar to play, it looks like he's moving. And all of these animations have little keyframes for every bone. Once you go to pose mode, you can select any bone and see their X location, XYZ location, quaternion rotations, and scales. You can delete all these to get rid of the animation once you select all the bones. And following normal Blender controls, you can insert keyframes as you see fit. You can enable recording, move your timeline, do all kinds of poses, whatever you see fit. I'm just trying to make something where he moves. To start out, you might want to insert keyframes for everything though. Once you're happy with your animation, you do File, Export, ANM.pxd, maybe do it somewhere separate, and make sure that you actually add .anm.pxd to the end of your file. Unfortunately, the add-on doesn't actually do this for you because Blender does not like the fact that some file extensions have 2 periods. So you'll have to make sure you do that on your own. And once you export it, if you re-import it just to make sure it exported correctly, we can see that is the case. Additionally, we can also batch import animations and batch export them. So with your skeleton selected, File, Import, ANM.pxd, I can select a range of animations using Shift click or Control click to do them individually or to select everything in between. And I can press Import. And you'll notice it might take a second. Blender's UI will freeze if you start clicking around. It might show a white screen. Blender has not crashed yet, it is just thinking. And here's one animation showing, but I did import several. So how do I actually see the other ones that I imported? If you press N on your keyboard to open this right panel, under this tab here where it says Animation, there's going to be this submenu, PXD Animation Tools, and we can see all of our imported animations. If you have so many animations that you need to try and find it, you can type in here to filter it out, such as kick. These will show any animation that comes with that word in there. And this button here will set that as the active animation, which will adjust your Blender frame rate, your timeline range, and anything that is needed to make this animation show correctly. And if you want to batch export, what's going to happen is your files will take this name, the action name, and create a file out of it. So the way you batch export is you just press the batch export button, find a directory. I'm going to make a new one here called export. And anything down here doesn't actually matter. You can type whatever. You're just looking to find a folder to export everything to. And you're going to press export. And it's going to think. Again, UI might freeze, but Blender's just thinking. But mine did it pretty fast. And if you go to that folder, you'll notice a bunch of files, ANM.pxd. It's just following whatever the name of the action was. For slower computers, I would recommend going to Window, Toggle System Console, and this will actually print out the progress of your animation imports or exports. So for example, if I did File Import ANM.pxd and I selected, I don't know, like 30 or 50 animations, Blender's going to be unresponsive for quite a while. But if you enable the console here, you can actually see the progress. It'll say what number animation it's on out of how many it's supposed to do, the name of the animation it's importing, and what frame it is importing. You'll notice though, if you click inside this console, the progress will freeze. So the way to unfreeze it is just right click in the middle of that window. And progress continues. Now I'm not going to completely finish this, but this is just a quick tip for you to show that if you're waiting and you just want to go make some food while you're waiting, you can at least see what the progress is. I would say don't import every animation at once. Maybe make a save file where you have like 50 at a time, part A, part B, part C, some way to separate it. If you imported every animation with every frame and saved that file, you might end up with a several gigabyte blend file because these animations are all being decompressed. And Blender will run very slowly, and this panel on the right will become very unwieldy to navigate. And searching might also take a little bit longer. There we go. We finished importing 104 animations here. And we can scroll through, set any one we want, and it will adjust everything as needed. Now, the very last thing to note is you don't have to force yourself to use the existing range here. A lot of these animations have a set number of frames, but what if you want a longer animation? Well, you'll have to adjust the timeline. If you're just importing and exporting a single animation, you can adjust the timeline here and maybe make an animation follow this new timeline, and you could do File, Export, ANM.pxd, and it will pull the animation length from here. But for batch exports, those are found somewhere else. If you go to Animation up here, down here where it says Dope Sheet, you're going to click Action Editor, and here you should be able to select the different actions. Then on the right panel here, under Custom Properties, you'll see a couple different things here. You'll see the frame rate, options on whether or not you want to compress or export it. You can uncheck it if you don't want it exported. Maybe this is a predefined pose you don't want exported. And up here under this manual frame range, you can set the start and end points. And you can see over here, the start and end point is moving. This is a floating point value for some reason, so just make sure that whatever value you're putting is a whole number, rounded to the nearest zero. If you do 100.5, it might round to 101, it might round to 100. Since you don't know for sure, just make sure you actually enter the explicit frame range you're looking for. And you could do that with any animation you want. You'll see different frame ranges. Most of the animations in Sonic Frontiers will be 30 frames per second. Most of the ones in Shadow Generations will be 60 frames per second. In the end, it doesn't actually matter because the frames will be interpolated if you are playing at a higher frame rate. But that's just how they're stored. And if you really need some very fine control on in-between motions, you might want to set a higher frame rate. Or if you don't really care, you could just set that to a lower frame rate. I'd say 30 is fine for most applications. And that's about it. Once you're done, you can copy and paste all your exported animations back into your original archive, replace it, and you can now compress this folder by dragging it onto HedgeArcPack.exe. Archive type depends on what game you're doing it for. For Frontiers, you would type Frontiers, or for Sonic and Shadow Generations, you do sxsg/Miller. But for me, I'm doing Frontiers. Oh, here's a good note. Broken pipe means that the archive has files that are being accessed currently. So you might need to just exit Blender. And I believe my Blender has crashed. That's nice. Let's double check here. Oh, there we go. It crashed because I had things highlighted in the console. Let's try that again. Drag the folder onto HedgeArcPack. Frontiers, packing. That time it worked. And now this Sonic.pack is something I could put in my mods folder, and it will have modified animations. I didn't really actually modify the animations in this video, so putting this in a game would not really yield anything, but that is how you would do it. And that is all. Take care and have fun.